In a dramatic and suspenseful framework, a teenager experiences a dark tragedy at one point in his life, entering a deep tunnel of pessimism and hopelessness after one of his two friends loses the ability to walk in an illegal fight, while the other friend leaves the city and his father falls ill. He struggles to adapt and escape his tragedy, but life offers him new hope, leading to a complete transformation as he makes new acquaintances and forms new friendships. He also experiences an ideal love story, and fate ultimately writes a happy ending for him and his friends. This story is a pure creation of imagination. Any similarities between the characters and real life are purely coincidental. Linked to the novel in the first comic book is Jacob is a 17-year-old typical teenager facing common challenges. His family has struggled with poverty, and his father suffered a stroke when Jacob was 15 years old, leading to a decline in their quality of life. Since then, Jacob has often contemplated suicide, and it is clear that he is deeply sad from every perspective. It is evident that he is concealing something. He has a limited number of friends and spends most of his time alone. He has a passion for MMA fighting arts, but could never afford to join a club. He barely managed to keep up with his studies. His father was a blacksmith, a trade he learned from his grandfather, Thibaut Shalers. The Shalers lived in a small town called Hersas, where people were not very open to technology, with most being farmers, blacksmiths, or mechanics. The first half of the town was quite noisy, filled with the smells of fresh paint, oil, and melting iron. The other half, the more affluent area, was home to the wealthy, who owned large estates, beautiful castles, and expansive gardens where people played polo or golf, oblivious to anything beyond their wealth. The town was surrounded by towering mountains and appeared intimidating at night, yet was beautiful in the spring and autumn, and very cold and foggy in the winter. Jacob feels a strong sense that he will achieve something significant in the future, and refuses to accept his current fate. He believes he will one day discover what lies beyond those formidable mountains. He is almost certain he will escape, but not through academics as his father wishes. He aims to do so as a professional MMA fighter. At 15, he participated in underground, non-professional fights for money, alongside a few friends: Laney, the farmer's son with blonde hair and blue eyes, Old Sunday, and Tim, the primary school teacher with dark hair and fair skin. Although they were stronger, Jacob's speed and flexibility allowed him to win most of his underground bout. Occasionally, he would return home with bruises on his face from losses, explaining that he had gotten into a fight. His family didn't pay much attention to his condition. His father had asthma, making work challenging, while his mother, Gothica, worked in a kindergarten. He has a younger sister, Mary, who has dark eyes, fair skin, and long, soft hair. She is about 6 years old and is usually the first to notice the bruises on Jacob's face. He rarely attended high school.
Jacob's face. He rarely attended high school. Jake spent most of his hours hanging out with Laney and Timmy, smoking and drinking while discussing their dreams and life after high school. They weren't very popular with the ladies because to them, they were just pathetic poor kids, and their fate seemed sealed just like that of their fathers and the fathers before them. Perhaps that was harsh, but they didn't even care. Life kept going, and they continued their routine until that day. It was an ordinary night for Jake, Timmy, and Laney as they participated in a tournament in the Underground City Championship. Laney was beaten up and nearly killed in the fight, refusing to quit until he passed out. They took him to the hospital, and both Jake and Timmy, along with many other fighters, were arrested. That was the end for Laney, while Jake and Timmy's friendship was over. In the spring, Timmy was sent by his father to another city, Minaza, a big modern city. Laney was his only friend, and Jake was devastated that year. He realized that his life was already wasted. The underground fighting and illegal fights were over, and he had to do something or he would end up just like his father. Jake was forced by his mother and father to focus more on his studies. He started attending his classes non-stop until that day when he was, as always, silent, thinking and counting the minutes and seconds until the bell rang. One thought never left his mind: the moment Laney passed out, and the silence that felt like he was deaf. The lights of police cars and ambulances were flashing, reflecting red and blue lights on his face, with cops reading his rights while putting handcuffs on him. Then he heard a smooth, gentle voice from behind him. It felt like the best voice he had ever heard. "Jake, do you have an extra pen?" Jake turned around with a hoodie covering most of his face and dark circles under his eyes from lack of sleep. He was astonished by what he saw.
Caroline was a 17-year-old cheerleader from the affluent part of the city. Her father owned numerous businesses, both inside and outside the city. She was so far out of his league, but he had never noticed or spoken to her before. As he stared, a book hit him in the head. "Focus, Jake, right here." Mr. McNally, the angry math teacher, stood before him, with the entire class laughing at him. The pretty girls and other wealthy kids were saying what a loser Jake was, but none of them wanted to provoke him. Jake stared at the teacher with cold, dead eyes. The teacher walked out with a smile on his face, as if he knew what Jake was about to do and the big mistake he was about to make. The bell rang, and Jake picked up his bag and walked out. It was a rainy day, so he put on his extra hoodie over his raincoat and started walking quickly to catch the bus for work. He was running late and had promised to work at the supermarket after school to help his mom and his sick father. While he hurried under the rain, an umbrella covering his head, he turned and saw Caroline. "What's up, Shady?" she said, and saw Caroline. "What's up, Shady?" she said. He turned to her and replied, "Hi, you again. What do you want?" She said, "Nothing. I just covered your head from the rain." He responded, "But why? Why do you want to do that?" She said, "It was raining. It's just a nice gesture." He replied, "Okay, thank you, but I don't need it," and started running, leaving Caroline behind. Shocked, Jake arrived at the supermarket, and Mr. Nicholas was angry because he was late. Jake explained the reason, and Mr. Nicholas, knowing what Jake was going through, said, "Okay, get changed and go to work." That's what Jake did. The work was done by 10 p.m., as always. Mr. Nicholas gave him a lift home, and he had dinner with his family. He woke up screaming as usual at 3:45 a.m. He couldn't shake the accident from his mind. He always blamed himself for not stopping Lanny's fight. At 7 a.m., he woke up, brushed his teeth, washed his face, changed his clothes, and ate his breakfast without even noticing he was on the school bus. That voice again from the back seat. "Jake, Jake," whispered in his ears. "Why did you run away from me yesterday?" He turned again to see Caroline, but then turned back without saying anything. Jake always received what he called unnecessary attention from girls. They always chased him, but he didn't care. He thought that if he didn't achieve what he promised himself, he would always feel unworthy and remain nothing but that pathetic poor kid with a sick father and a mother who worked as a kidney gardener. He was sure that Caroline was one of those girls. He entered school as always, counting the minutes, bored by whatever the teachers were talking about. At the end of class, he was the first to leave. He didn't do much, went to school, passed Laney's house while being shouted at by Laney's mom, and arrived late as always to Mr. Nicholas's supermarket. At home, dinner was followed by waking up at 3:45 a.m. screaming, "Just stop the fight, stop the fight," with his mom waking him up, both of them in tears. At school, he kept avoiding Caroline or any other girl, but she didn't seem to give up. She continued to say good morning, even if he said nothing. That day, while he was at work, she showed up. "Oh, there's Jake, Jake, Jake," she exclaimed. He had enough and said, "Okay, what can I do for you?" She reached out her hand to shake his and said, "I'm Caroline." Jake did not reach for her hand and said, "I know who you are," then picked up the food boxes and left. Caroline followed him and said, "I'm sorry for what happened to Lanny. That was like throwing a match into gasoline." He turned to her angrily and said, "Don't say that again. I don't need your pity or anyone else's pity. Just leave me the hell alone. I don't know what kind of sick game you and the other classmates are playing behind my back, but I'm not buying it."